Welcome back, recruits. This is Robbie Grayson with General Schneider, and this is Bootcamp with a General. In this lesson, we're going to discuss the character trait of positivity, which is the ability to remain mentally tough and resilient under stress. General Schneider, in your book, Jet Pioneer, a fighter pilot's memoir, you talk about some of your experiences in combat. Mm-hmm. And like most war fighters, you don't really talk a lot about it unless you're asked. So I want to ask you some questions that I think that our audience would be curious to know about. You know, most young men wonder, they spend a lot of their time wondering how they would perform under a stressful situation, in a fight, in some sort of extenuating circumstance. And so I was wondering if you would be able to illuminate what it was like the first time that you were involved in a combat situation, what your mindset was, how a positivity figured into that.
Well, I think it really relates to training. If you're completely trained, just like an athlete, you know what you need to do, then you sort of blank out everything else. You focus right on your job, whatever you have to do, whether it's football or flying airplanes or public speaking or whatever. And my first combat mission, I was getting shot at from every direction, going down through a valley, shooting up a bunch of North Korean tanks and trucks. And I was getting shot at from the surrounding mountains, and bullets were coming from every direction. And my thought was, how I've got to fly 99 more of these. But I just went ahead and hit the target and went on. And from then on, I don't really think I had any problem in the air. Now, on the ground, you think about it before and after a mission. But in the air, the secret is being fully trained and really focus on your job. And that blanks out the fear and concerns, anything else. You just focus so much on that you don't worry about anything else. And that's, to me, is training and then focus on what you're doing.
Right. So this really relates back to the character trait of dedication.
Right.
In which we have to bridge the big vision with the smallest detail.
Right.
So I know in the military, at least in some branches, they refer to that as standard operating procedures.
Right.
So you've got to have some standard operating procedures in your life that actually regulate that particular aspect.
Sure.
Now, there were times that you've described where you would go on a mission and you would not come back with the same battle buddies that you took off with. How did that impact you, especially as you were on that mission and you saw, the casualties around you?
Well, it's concerning, but I guess you just sort of, my thought was it's not going to happen to me. It may happen to the guy right next to you, and certainly you're concerned about it because they're good friends and you've flown with them. But you just have to be a bit impersonal in combat. You can't take it too personally, even though they're your very best friend, because it will influence your performance down the line. Now, later on, in later years, certainly it does bother you. I still have vivid memories of what happened in combat many times, and that's been a long time ago. But at the time, you just have to focus on your job and try to just not think about the more emotional part of the thing.
Well, most of the young men who are probably watching this video are likely not to go into the military, but will go into business of some sort for themselves.
Sure.
So how does positivity figure into business when you're in an economy that is slumped and when you are surrounded by other competitors who seem to be better than you? Well,
one thing is get good counsel. In business, I always had an advisory board. They didn't have fiduciary responsibility, but they could just let their hair down and say, look, you're heading out in the wrong direction, or you ought to try this. And I recommend to anybody that's starting their own business, first thing you do is get 3 or 4 really good local businessmen or women, and you can call them and tell them what your problems are. And also in business, you want to have your accountant and your attorney and other professionals, and then be real honest with them, because if you go into a slump, they shouldn't be surprised. So the more transparent you can be in business with your people and your supporters and your advisory board and your board of directors, the better off you are, because it'll help weather those down times that we all go through.
Right. Well, this links back to integrity as well, where we talk about how with integrity, the external and your internal life need to match up. So transparency seems to serve many different purposes, but
Sure.
One purpose it can serve for the recruit is that they don't have to hold all that tension inside them and that anxiety of what if someone finds out.
Sure. No, you just can't hide all this stuff. And the big thing in life, in my opinion, is admit when you've got problems to somebody, get good counsel, and take it for what it's worth, and ask 3 or 4 really good people that you know that have good experience, and be honest with them. Tell them you're having problems financially or personally or emotionally, right. and get counseling, and that helps share the load. And instead of just trying to bottle it up in yourself, that's not a good way to go.
Right. And speaking about resilience, can you give us any examples of how you bounce back from something that probably would keep the average person down?
Well, I didn't have any real problems in business. I had 6 businesses after I got out of the Air Force, and I had some ups and downs, but I just tried to be very honest and straightforward with everybody that was working with me or for me or helping support me. And therefore, I didn't have the tension and stress that I helped share. I let other people help share it. And like the general said on TV the other night, he said, General Mattis, he said, I don't have stress, I give it. So, but I didn't, that's sort of a joke. But the big thing, I think, is just the more you can share what you're doing and what your problems are with other people. I'll go back to my childhood. I was entrepreneurial by nature, and I wanted to make some extra money. So I ordered this salve that was supposed to go on the cow's teats to help make them easier to milk. And I ordered this box of salve, and I couldn't sell it. I went around to the neighbors, and they wouldn't buy it. And then I started getting letters from the company that said we were going to send the sheriff after you, with the word, it really got tough. And I was really petrified. I could just, every car I saw going down the road, I thought it was the sheriff. Right. And I finally went to my mother and confessed what had happened. She said, "Oh, that's no problem. Just bottle it up and send it back to them." And that's what I did. And that was the last of the deal.
So did they object to you selling it?
No, they didn't. They never did say anything else on that. They just sent it back to him. But here I was carrying that real load myself as a kid, and I finally confessed and said what my problems were. And Mother said, easy solution, just bottle it up and send it back. Said, you still got all the stuff, so send it back to him. And that's the last I heard of it.
Well, so I guess the opposite of positivity obviously is negativity, and that's what you're describing.
Right. Is
the how important it is not to hold those things in.
Sure.
But, in going back to the character trait of integrity, what do you do when the cost of being honest with someone could result in major consequences for you? Maybe there are young men who have who feel burdened by, maybe a crime or maybe some sort of activity that they've been involved in, but they know deep down inside they need to alleviate this pressure, but they're not quite certain how to do that. What would you advise? What are the small steps that a young man can take towards that, to alleviate that stress?
Well, it just goes back again to sharing it with somebody, knowledgeable people that won't be judgmental, whether maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your pastor, maybe it's a good buddy that you trust. But get it out. Don't just sit there and let it ball up inside of you, because that'll just eat you alive. And that's like being mad at somebody, or somebody maybe did you wrong, and you're mad at them. You're only hurting yourself. Better to go and apologize or confess or whatever. And I'm not Catholic, but I guess confession really helps a lot of people that way. I try to say my prayers every day. I say prayers constantly, because the good Lord has taken care of me for 90 years now, so I got real good confidence He's going to keep doing it. So.
Well, we've got a model airplane here. This is the F-86F Sabre.
Right.
Now, you've flown quite a few different planes.
Yeah, I've flown 32 different kinds of airplanes.
32.
Yeah, but this is my all-time favorite. When I was teaching gunnery in Las Vegas, I had 3 gunnery students, and many of them went on to be very successful. Sam Johnson from Texas is now a congressman, is one of my students, and I had many others that went on to be colonels and generals. But I would fly a functional check flight in the morning, just at sunrise, and I'd go fly 3 missions with my students, and then go back and fly another mission just before sundown to test the airplanes coming out of the hangar. And then I'd take off on the weekend, and I'd fly across the country and get night and weather, because I couldn't get it in Nevada because we were all day flying. So I was getting 75 hours a month flying the F-86. And it's such a wonderful airplane. You just feel like you put it on. It's like you put on your flying suit.
Right.
Just a great flying airplane. So I loved every minute of it. And of all the planes I've flown, and some of them are great, I still enjoy this F-86.
Wow. And speaking of kind of the skin that you're in, your flight suit, it's pretty impressive that after all these years, you actually fit into it.
Well, I just try to stay physically fit, and
Clearly.
And haven't gained a lot of weight, so it worked out all right.
Well, thus far, a lot of the character traits we've talked about, I can see how they've contributed, honestly, to your health, as well as your mental health,
Right.
which is something that we all hope to have a good quality of. So these traits are going to be good for these young men.
Well, just again, not smoking, not drinking, not taking drugs, exercising every day, and eating. I've never been on a diet. I just eat a small amount of everything. And I say I'm on a seafood diet. I see food and I eat it, and I eat a little bit of everything, and it seems to work for me. And certainly, not smoking and drinking and drugs contribute to your long-term health. And young people ought to think about what it's going to be like when they get to my age. It's here I am in really good health. And my peers, many of them, just like you said, they've got all kinds of problems, mainly because of those influences that manifest themselves as you get older. Well, one thing is just, instead of worrying a lot, worrying to me is just chasing your tail, and you're not thinking of alternative solutions. Immediately, I try, if something happens that is not on track or is not going the way that I think it should, I almost immediately start thinking of alternative solutions to the situation. The old saying goes, if one door closes, look for 2 other doors. And a good example, in the Air Force, you have to have a destination on your flight, and then you have to have an alternate, be able to have enough fuel to go to the alternate and land safely. And I always planned on 2 alternates just in case I needed those. But I think the big thing is just any situation that, and many things won't turn out the way you think they should, but instead of just worrying about it and saying there's no solution, immediately start looking, use your creative mind and think, what are some other ways we can do this? And if necessary, ask your friends or your spouse or your buddies, how would you handle this? And start getting new, fresh ideas of how you're going to solve the situation that you're in that looks like it's a blank wall. Always look for open doors, other ways to do a job. So it's a mental situation. And I read a lot of books on positive thinking, and I've done that since I was a kid. And you just condition your mind to think positively instead of saying, oh, me, the world's coming to an end, or there's no solution to this problem. Immediately start thinking of ways that you can resolve the situation that's facing you.